Inspector Carr investigates.
As regular listeners to this series are aware, I have made it a policy at this time of the year to choose from my casebook the type of investigation that will do nothing to detract from the season of goodwill, which, happily, will soon be upon us. By that, I mean that I avoid a case in which the circumstances might be considered a little too stark and gruesome. Mark you, murder is in itself abhorrent, whatever the method used, or however great the provocation. And once I began probing into the character of the victim, I realized that this 65-year-old lady's attitude to people was highly provocative, to say the least. I chose this particular case because, strange as it may seem, one of the clues leading to the identity of the culprit was an old beggar's rhyme. Its origins are lost in the mists of time, but children still recite it at Christmas time. Now, I'm sure you'll know it. It goes like this. Christmas is coming, the geese are getting fat. Please put a penny in the old man's hat. If you haven't got a penny, a halfpenny will do. If you haven't got a halfpenny, God bless you. Well, that certainly brings back memories. But let's get on with tonight's story, which I've called The Mask of Death. Miss Ursula Manning was found dead on Christmas morning by her doctor, Neville Hutchins. Despite the severity of the winter, her bedroom window was wide open, and on the deceased's face was a look of such horror as to convince the medical practitioner that the woman's death did not result from some natural cause.
I don't believe it. I simply don't believe it. All right, Ursula had a weak heart. Everybody knew that. But she was frightened, terrified to death. And I mean that medically as well as literally.
Well, Dr. Hutchins, you wouldn't go to the length of reporting the matter to the authorities unless you were so convinced.
Well, look, can't you see the stark terror on her face?
Yes, sir, I can. But a nightmare could induce...
She was murdered, man, murdered. I'm relying on you fellows to punish the killer.
Have you any ideas on the matter, Doctor?
Well, perhaps I should be a bit careful.
Doctor, if you're convinced that she was indeed murdered, then time is of the essence. You're saying, in effect, that she was deliberately frightened to death.
That's what I've been trying to tell you for the last 5 minutes.
It's all right, Doctor, all right. I realize that this must be a great shock for you.
You don't have to say it. Sorry.
Yes. Yes, there are signs of someone coming through the window. Pity it rained so heavily in the night. Those footprints won't help very much. Hey, look at this, Doctor. These windows are warped. Anyone could have inserted a lever of some sort and opened this window.
I told her she ought to have those windows seen to, particularly when I advised her to turn this into her bedroom so she didn't have to climb the stairs. This was originally her drawing room.
You reported the incident at 10:15. Had you been here long before you telephoned?
Oh, less than 5 minutes.
Any ideas to the time of death?
Impossible. Many hours. Body's cold. Rigor mortis has set in. It's too difficult, Inspector. This cold weather doesn't help.
No, I can see that. No one in the house?
No.
Why do you say it in that tone, Doctor?
Because I believe that Mildred is responsible for this.
Mildred?
Her niece.
Mildred Manning?
No. Sarah Manning married a chap called Jenner. Wasn't a very happy marriage. Sarah committed suicide about, must have been at least 18 years ago. Jenner died impoverished a few years later, so Ursula took care of her. This is the thanks she's got.
Well, where's Mildred now?
You tell me, Inspector. She stormed out of this house just after tea. I went upstairs to see if she was in her room. Her bed hadn't been slept in. Didn't take any clothes with her, from what I can see. 28-year-old woman acting like a petulant schoolgirl. All over a gramophone record.
Care to tell me about it?
Well, I was having tea with Ursula, and then I heard this carol being played. So did Ursula. I booked a table at that new French restaurant in the High Street, if that's all right.
Are you sure, Neville?
Sure.
Did you want to spend Christmas Eve with an old invalid like me?
Oh, really? How many times do I have to tell you that you're not an invalid? So long as you don't overdo things, you'll live to 100.
Just a moment. Where's that coming from?
It's a carol. I think it...
Mildred! Mildred!
Yes, Auntie?
Stop that! Don't you know I'm entertaining Dr. Hutchins? Kitchens to tea.
Is it disturbing the doctor? I'm sorry.
I loathe that music. Where did you get it?
It was given to me.
Given to you?
A Christmas present.
Don't you know better than to open your Christmas present before Christmas morning?
I was just trying to
what?
try and instill a bit of Christmas cheer, that's all. I'm sorry.
Who gave you that? It wasn't?
Yes, it was, if you're referring to Bob Grinstall.
That good-for-nothing waster. You want to end up like your mother.
If you mention Mummy once more,
You listen to me, Mildred. I took you into this house, brought you up, gave you an education so that you could make something of yourself. And I'm not going to let you throw yourself away on a garage mechanic.
He's not a garage mechanic. He owns his own garage.
Really? What you mean is that he runs the place while his father is in prison.
Mr. Grinstall didn't steal anything. He was drunk. That doesn't turn Bob into a criminal.
You will stay away from him, do you hear? I'm not going to let you.
You can't stop me. You don't want me to get married, do you? Who's going to cook and scrub and clean for you?
Go to your room.
I'm going all right. For good.
You see now why I suspect Mildred.
Yes.
After Ursula, Mrs. Manning, had her attack, I warned Mildred to guard against upsetting her aunt in any way, that any kind of shock could prove fatal.
I see. Why murder? You say this niece of hers is 28. She doesn't need permission to marry.
I wasn't going to make mention of this, but I have to.
Doctor, you must know that withholding information of any kind...
Yes. Ursula and I had come to an understanding. I've been a widower for 6 years. I won't pretend that it's a case of love and adoration, but we've known each other nearly all our lives. We were going to announce our engagement at a New Year's Eve party that the mayor of Chin was going to give.
Well, has this any bearing?
Yes. To my horror, and I admit it, it may sound mercenary, but I was astonished when Ursula let it be known she hadn't made a will.
When was this?
Last Sunday. I was there for lunch. The important thing is that Mildred was there, too.
You haven't told me what you want for Christmas, Neville. It's so long since I bought a present for a man. I do wish you wouldn't be so negative.
Now, Ursula, I did mention that a tie would be most acceptable.
Oh, nonsense. I want to give you something much more expensive. After all, one doesn't give one's husband-to-be... What is it, Mildred? Surprised?
No, Auntie. I don't think I am.
You'll say nothing about it. We're going to announce it at the mayor's party. I suppose we should tell Sutton. He's my solicitor. Takes care of all my financial business. Perhaps he's right. Last time I saw him, he kept nagging me about making my will. I told him that was asking for trouble, inviting the gods to...
You mean there's no will that... Oh, really, Ursula, that's most remiss of you. I've made a will, but of course I shall have to change it now that you're coming into my life.
I see, Doctor. Who's Miss Manning's next of kin?
That's the whole point. Mildred. There are no close relatives other than Mildred. And there is your motive.
Care to come around the house with me, since you know it so well?
Yes, of course. I told you I looked into her bedroom. Mildred's.
When did you see Miss Manning last? Alive, I mean.
We dined at my favorite restaurant, a place called the Pigalle. We returned here at about 9:30. I didn't come into the house. This is Mildred's room.
I see. Bed not slept in. Window securely fastened. Well, what's in the room opposite?
Oh, spare bedroom. And at the end of the passage is the bathroom.
Any idea what happened to the young woman?
None.
Oh, I noticed a suitcase on the top of the wardrobe. Could it be that she's staying with her fiancé?
It could be.
They own a garage, you say. Do you think it'll be open on Christmas morning?
Oh, I doubt it, but they live over the premises.
Oh, that's fine. Let's try telephoning, shall we?
What about Ursula, Miss Manning?
Well, I shall arrange for her to be taken to the police mortuary, since you're convinced that death was induced and not of natural causes. There'll certainly be an inquest.
Surely, Inspector, if you apprehend the person responsible, there's no need for an inquest, is there?
Oh, true enough, Doctor. You don't happen to know the number of the garage, do you?
I've got it in my little book here. Where are we? Yes. 784-2827. There's the telephone.
Ah, yes.
Hello? Hilda Bristol speaking.
Second thoughts. Since you know her, ask about Mildred.
Hello? Hello?
Mrs. Jenner, it's Dr. Hutchins here.
Oh, good morning, Doctor. Merry Christmas to you.
It's not a very Merry Christmas morning, I'm afraid. Is Mildred with you?
Mildred? Mildred Jenner? Oh, no, not this morning, she isn't.
Would your son, Robert, have any idea where she is?
Well, I have no idea where my boy is. Mildred arrived here yesterday. We were going to have a little Christmas Eve party, just the three of us. My sister Gertrude and her husband. Instead of which, Bob packed his bags and the two of them said they were going to drive to Margate. She's all right, isn't she, Doctor? I must say, when she arrived here, she looked terrible. I couldn't get a word out of her. What's happened?
Something terrible has happened.
Well, give me that receiver.
Terrible? She hasn't done anything foolish, has she?
Mrs. Grinsdall, I'm a police officer. Can I come and see you?
Police? Police? Haven't we suffered enough from you people? Can't you leave us alone?
As she ushered me into their living room, I saw a photograph of her as a young bride, holding onto the arm of her newly acquired husband.
Yes, that's him. Taken on our wedding day, nearly 30 years ago. Oh, I never thought that my Frank would spend a Christmas in prison. Why'd you come here? He's due to be released on February the 3rd.
I'm sorry I should be the cause of your being upset, Mrs. Grinsdall. It's not about your husband at all. We're trying to trace Mildred Jenner. You see, she's Miss Manning's next of kin.
What do you mean?
Her aunt is dead. She died sometime during the night.
Oh, no. Oh, poor Mildred. She will be so upset walking out on her aunt like she did.
You say that she and your son have gone to Margate. Have you any idea where?
Oh, yes. Katie, which used to be Katie Harris, she married the Miller boy. I didn't hear the conversation, but all I know is that my son and Mildred were invited to spend Christmas with them. Seeing that Mildred was so upset, she ain't got a toothbrush or anything. She just said that she had to get away.
I see.
There's something wrong, isn't there?
Well, it'd be foolish not to tell you. Dr. Hutchins is withholding a death certificate. He suspects foul play.
Foul play? So it wasn't her aunt?
Yes, Dr. Hutchins said it was a collapse of the heart. But, let's leave it like that for the moment, shall we? Would you please give me the address in Margate? Come in.
Well, this gentleman insisted on accompanying Miss Jenner, sir.
Yeah, now look,
Oh, that's
sir.
all right. You're Robert Grinsdall, I take it?
Yes.
All right, Sergeant.
Right, sir.
Not a very pleasant way to spend Christmas, is it? Oh, please sit down.
Sergeant wouldn't tell us anything. He said that my aunt died during the night and you want to talk to me.
Fair enough. That's about the situation.
Oh, no, it isn't. You think that Mildred murdered her aunt, didn't you?
Bob, what are you saying?
Mum telephoned while you were out with Katie. These people think it wasn't her aunt. Foul play, they said. They must think you had something to do with it because you rowed with her.
I? Foul play? Am I being arrested?
No one's talking about arrest. Not yet.
But what
Be
are
quiet,
you?
young man. It's believed that someone broke into the house and literally frightened your aunt to death.
Well, Millie wouldn't have to do that. She's got a key, haven't you, love?
Now, Mr. Grinsdall, I can understand your concern, and I'm glad you're here, because you too can help us with our inquiries. But if you interrupt again, I shall send for Sergeant Jackson, and I'll have you kept waiting in the interviewing room next door. Now, what's it to be?
All right. But my father...
Your father was sentenced to 6 months imprisonment for driving whilst under the influence. I know all about it. But it's got nothing to do with the death of Miss Manning. What time did you leave to go to Margate, Miss Jenner?
Oh, I'm not sure. I was in such a state. I arrived at Bob's house. I just wanted to get away from Jim, away from everything. I never wanted to see my aunt again. I suppose Dr. Hutchins told you about the quarrel.
All right. You, Mr. Grinsdall?
Mildred wasn't in the house for more than 5 minutes. She telephoned her friend Katie. I packed a few things, and we drove to the chemist in the high street, bought a toothbrush for Millie, and we were away.
What time was that?
Well, between 5 and 5:30.
Did you give me the name of the chemist's shop?
It was the Cheam Pharmacy.
Thank you. Now, what time did you arrive at your friend's place?
Well, I would say about 8:30, wouldn't you, Bob?
Oh, a bit later than that, love. Just on 9.
And you both swear that at 9 o'clock you were in Margate?
Now, look...
All right. I take it that your friend Mrs. Miller and her husband will corroborate?
Yes, of course they will. What's more, there was young Tony.
Tony?
Oh, Katie's son. I'm his godmother.
And how old is Tony?
14.
Well, you can both relax. It would have been impossible for either of you to frighten Miss Manning to death.
But Dr. Hutchins thinks I did, doesn't he? All right. It's a terrible thing to say, now that she's dead, and particularly on Christmas morning, but I did hate her. She was so mean.
As you say, young lady, she is dead.
He's right, Millie.
Sorry.
Now, have you any idea who would want to do such a dreadful thing? Someone who knew that your aunt was warned against undue excitement.
Well, the whole of Cheam knew that.
Oh, no, Bob, that's an exaggeration.
Well, exaggeration or not, the whole of Cheam knew that she was... Oh, well, there's no point in throwing stones on her grave, as the saying goes. Do you know what she did last week, Inspector?
What?
Young Timothy Stockley. He's only 10, if that. I delivered Mr. Robertson's car back to him. He's the butcher in Surbiton Road. I just drove up, was going inside to tell Mr. Robertson I had his car outside. Good morning, Miss Manning.
Don't you speak to me, young Brinslow.
Here, lady, spare a copper.
What do you want?
Christmas is coming and the geese are getting fat. Please put a penny in the old man's hat. If you haven't got a penny, a halfpenny will do. If you haven't got a halfpenny, God bless you.
Oh, stop tugging at my skirt, you little ragamuffin.
Oh, it's all right, Tim. Tim, up you get, boy, there. You're not hurt as badly as all that.
It's me ankle, broken me ankle.
Oh, she didn't mean you to fall off the curb.
Yes, she did. I wasn't collecting from me. It was the church Christmas fund.
Yeah, look, try standing on it there.
Right. Oh.
I saw that. That woman oughtn't to be allowed to breathe. Fancy slapping a kid's face like that. He asked my permission to stand outside my shop. Oh, Bob, so you've got my car, have you? She's just accused me of trying to rob her. Car fixed?
Oh, that's right, sir. It's all right now. I've adjusted the choke. Do you mind if I drive young Tim home? Somebody better look at his ankle. We used to laugh at her when we were kids. Just think she was a silly old spinster. But she was more than that. Treated Mildred here like a skivvy. Wouldn't have a woman in just for a couple of hours a week for the heavy stuff, would she, Millie?
Accused the butcher of trying to rob her, did she?
Oh, it's not only the butcher. Half the tradesmen in Cheam hated her guts.
Car?
Operations here, sir.
Yes, off.
The labs have just been through. The soil taken from the window ledge came from the garden, all right, sir.
Thanks, Ops. What about the photographs? Have they been blown up yet?
They're on their way now to you, sir.
Thanks, Ops. All right, you two. I've kept you long enough. You got your car outside, Mr. Grinstall?
Yes, sir.
Well, I suppose you realize that everything you've said has been recorded. We'll have it transcribed and sent round to you. There'll be 2 copies. I'd be grateful if you'd each sign one.
Excuse me, sir. Are you sure that someone deliberately frightened Miss Manning to death? Mildred here told me that if looks could kill, she wouldn't be alive on this Christmas Day. Not after the doctor mentioned about the will. Mildred is now next of kin. He won't get a penny, will he?
Of Miss Manning's estate? No, I'm afraid he won't.
But supposing Mildred here had been convicted of murder, she wouldn't get the money, would she? Even though she were next of kin.
No, Mr. Grinstall. The law says that no one may benefit from the execution of a crime committed by the beneficiary. But let me make one thing clear. I saw the dead body of your aunt, Miss Jenner. If you'd seen the expression of terror on her face... Oh, by the way, I think I'll have a word with Mr. Robertson.
Why have you come to see me, Inspector? I think Dr. Hutchins is daft. I heard him in the Cheam Club the other night, shooting his mouth off about the old girl being murdered. I suppose he's telling everyone I did it. The man's as crazy as she was. Everybody knew he was hanging his hat up. This Manning lived like a miser, and they say she'll be proved to be worth over $1 million. You know her father was Manning Marmalade, sold out to the big boys for a fortune.
Why do you say that Hutchins suspects you?
Because when she came in here accusing me of shortchanging her, she said that everybody knows I give underweight. When I asked her what she meant by everybody, she quoted Hutchins. I haven't served him an ounce of meat in the last 4 years. We don't like each other and the world knows it. Look what she did to that kid. Slapped his face and knocked him down. A nicer youngster you couldn't wish to meet.
Young Timothy.
Oh, you know about that. I happen to be chairman of the church committee. So you know how much that youngster collected for our Christmas fund, for the poor and needy? Over £110 all on his own. He made 35 quid with his guy forks. Halloween night, he went round with the other kids. They were all wearing those terrifying masks. They collected nearly 40 quid.
I wonder...
Beg your pardon?
Where would they get these masks?
Oh, we hire them. Get them for nothing. Thompson's novelty shop.
Daddy says... Oh,
Well, come in, Timothy, come in. How's your ankle?
fine.
I see that you returned your mask to the shop the day after Boxing Day.
Yes, sir.
So you were at a Christmas party on Christmas Eve, weren't you? With all the other boys?
Well, all our parents gave us permission for us lads to stay up late.
You took your Halloween mask with you to the party. Now, that wasn't a very clever thing to do, young Timothy. You climbed into that house. You wanted to give Miss Manning a fright. But you know what you did? You frightened her to death. So you see, Doctor, I suggest that you cease spreading stories suggesting the woman's niece killed her.
So it was young... She'd be sent to a reformatory or prison.
Oh, come now, Doctor. The woman's death must have been a bitter blow to you, but that child knew nothing about the lady's heart condition. He wanted to give her a fright, get his own back. His father's given him half a dozen of the best. I think that's punishment enough.
Punishment enough? Whatever his age, he's committed murder.
Now, that's nonsense, Doctor. You know it. No premeditation, no intent of causing bodily harm. He climbed in through the window, shouted, "Boo!" But it must have been a terrifying sight for your friend when she woke up and saw that grotesque face staring down at her. Young Timothy had no idea of the harm he caused. And from our standpoint, the case is closed.
Well, I suppose I owe Mildred an apology. But running away like that, I was surprised that you didn't arrest her on suspicion.
Oh, as soon as I spoke to them, I knew that she was innocent. In fact, you helped to prove their innocence.
I did? Impossible. I was convinced she was guilty. How?
Well, you see... Well, how did Dr. Hutchins demonstrate Mildred Jenner's innocence? By providing her with an alibi. If you remember, when did you see Miss Manning last? Alive, I mean.
We dined at my favorite restaurant, a place called the Pigalle. We returned here about 9:30.
About 9:30. And yet we know that the young woman, together with her fiancé, arrived at her friend's house in Margate just before 9 o'clock. What's more, there were her friends, Mr. and Mrs. Miller, to corroborate this. Mark you, I am conscious of the fact that I somewhat misled you when talking of Miss Manning's murder. Still, we are approaching the season of peace and goodwill, and perhaps it wasn't a bad thing to dramatize an investigation where the destruction of human life was not intended.
Inspector Carr Investigates, with Hugh Rouse in the title role, is written and produced by Michael Silver. Listen again next Thursday night as Inspector Carr Investigates.